Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. We're going to give it a couple more minutes to let some more people in, but we're happy to see you here this Monday morning, or actually Monday lunch. I'm still thinking it's morning. We'll give it one more minute. Okay, let's get started. So happy to see everybody here today. I'm glad you could make it. Our presentation today is by Eliza Gilbert, and she's with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And today she will be presenting on the San Juan River Basin Recovery Implementation Program to protect and recover two endangered fish species, the Colorado Pikeminnow and the Razorback sucker, in conjunction with new and existing water development projects on the San Juan River. So we're happy to have her here, and I hear there's lots of pictures of pike minnows and razorback suckers. So this is going to be great. Thank you so much for joining us today, Eliza, and take it away.
Thank you so much. That was a perfect summary of what we do. I feel like I don't even need to do anything now. So let's see, I'm going to share my screen and let's see, here we go. I was having some issues, so I think I might just keep it in the non-full mode. And I was looking at the participant list. I thought I would probably know somebody, but I don't recognize anybody's name. So I am Eliza Gilbert, and I really want to thank you for the invitation this afternoon to talk about the San Juan Recovery Implementation Program. It's always a mouthful to say. And let's see, for two things. One was, as you can, or let me just make sure everyone can see the presentation. Did I share correctly?
I see it, Eliza.
Okay, all right, awesome, thank you. Okay, so the first things first is you can probably see I have 28 slides in this. You know, I would prefer it be a conversation over me just presenting you these 28 PowerPoint slides. So if you want it to interrupt at any point in time, please do. I think I'm not like right now seeing hands up. So either we can like figure out how to curate that or just totally interrupt me. Would way prefer a conversation than just talking at you for 28 slides. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing I really want to make clear is that I do work for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The Fish and Wildlife Service is responsible for coordinating the recovery program, but the recovery program is made up of multiple federal agencies, multiple tribal governments, state governments, as well as a couple of non-for-profits. And so that is the entity of the San Juan Recovery Program, rather than it being a Fish and Wildlife Service entity. So I just want to make sure that that's pretty clear off the bat. And our job is just to kind of coordinate it. So the recovery program, as Christine said, is responsible. Well, we have a dual purpose. So our purpose is to recover Razorback sucker, who is on the left-hand side of your screen, and then Colorado Pikeminnow, that's a picture on your right-hand side of your screen. So that's our job, is to recover those two species. And while we're doing that, our second part of our mission is to provide for water development to continue in the San Juan River Basin. So we have this dual purpose mission, which can feel at odds at times. It's a little hard to get both of those in together. Let's see, what else do I have for you on that? I guess that's it for that slide. The kind of outline or my thought process and what I have for you is that I wanted to introduce the fish to you, so you knew who they were, why they're so awesome. I am a fish biologist, so that's the perspective I come from. So I really love our fish that we work with. Then I wanted to kind of get you through the history of how the San Juan Recovery Program was formed. It was created through what's called a Section 7 consultation, which is part of the Endangered Species Act, and then kind of take you through who all those people or entities are that make up the San Juan Recovery Program, what we do and how we do our job to recover the two endangered species and provide for water development, show our successes, and then kind of, I wish I wasn't kind of ending on a down note, but kind of the current hot topics, which are like the issues that we kind of are having to deal with very much at a landscape kind of scale. Okay, so I wanted to set the geography. I mean, I know, well, I have a feeling we're all in the Colorado River Basin, so we know what the basin is, and it's really important. This geography is really important for these two species because their historic habitat, they used to range throughout the entire Colorado River. They are both endemic to the Colorado River Basin. That word means that this is the only place that they are found in the world. So they evolved only within the Colorado River Basin, Razorback sucker, and Colorado Pikeminnow. As you're all probably aware, in 1922, the states and the federal governments got together and split the Colorado River Basin into the lower and the upper basin. That kind of comes into play when we're talking about the recovery of these two species, and comes into play when we're talking about the recovery, the San Juan River Basin Recovery Implementation Program, the fact that there's a split kind of politically, as well as that split kind of at Lake Powell between the upper and lower Colorado River Basin. So the San Juan River Basin Recovery Program, as it sounds, is specifically oriented to the San Juan River Basin. So that's where we do all of our work. It's where all of our focus is. However, let's see, I wonder if I can still do this. No laser pointer. Okay, so however, and can you guys see my cursor when I roll it around here?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. All right. So, however, so there is the San Juan River Basin that's responsible for this part of the geography of the Colorado River Basin. And then maybe some of you are familiar with the Upper Colorado River Endangered Fish Program. It's got an even longer name than we do. And they're responsible for recovery of these two species, as well as providing for water development in the Green and Colorado River. So there are two kind of sister recovery programs that are responsible for the entirety of the Upper Colorado River Basin. So everything I talk about will just be kind of within this geographic area here. Okay, so who are all of our pretty pictures that I told you I would have. So this is Colorado Pikeminnow, and these are all current photos of Colorado Pikeminnow. As I said, you know, it's endemic to the Colorado River Basin, so it's been around for forever, a very old species. As you can tell from these photos, it's a large fish, and these are actually kind of small considering like what this fish can actually grow to. In its southern range, which is kind of down by Mexico where it's a little warmer, this fish can grow to be about 6 feet in length. So it's a pretty awesome fish in as far as its size as it can get. As you can tell from its common name, it's a minnow. So it's part of the family of fishes that are minnows. And I think most people think of minnows as bait fish. So they're those small little fish that you might get from the bait fish store that you put on the end of your hook to get other predatory fish. And this fish, Colorado Pikeminnow, is part of that same family. So it makes it a pretty unique fish as far as it's being a minnow, and it can get to 6 feet in length. It is the largest minnow species in North America. The other pretty cool thing about this fish being a minnow is that when it's an adult, it's an entirely fish-eating fish. So it's a piscivore. So that's its diet. And so what this also means is in the evolution of the fish species within the Colorado River Basin, this was the top predator throughout the entire basin. So this was the fish that was kind of dominating all of the rest of the fish assemblage. Probably a lot of you know that there are other predators now in the Colorado River Basin. So you have walleye, smallmouth bass, northern pike, largemouth bass, etc. None of those are native to the Colorado River Basin. They are more predaceous than this fish, but this used to be the top predator in the Colorado River Basin. It's also a long-lived fish, so it can get up to be anywhere from 30 to 40 years, and it's highly migratory. And that's something both of these species have in common as being highly migratory. So this is the second fish that we're responsible for recovering. So you can see it's a little bit smaller, but it's still a pretty large fish. So razorback sucker can get to be about 3 feet in length. And I think as you can tell from the photos here, the pretty striking part about this fish is this keel that it has on the dorsal side of the fish. And it's, there's a couple of hypotheses about why that keel is there. One is to make it easier for it to swim up the rapids that exist in the Colorado River Basin. The other kind of hypothesis that's out there is that it's a kind of a protective device against Colorado pikeminnow, right? So having that keel makes it less easy to be consumed by Colorado pikeminnow. What else can I say about this? Oh, so it's a sucker. So you can kind of see its mouth parts here at the bottom. So it's a bottom feeder, and it feeds on detritus, plant matter, algae, insects, etc. What I want to show you here, so this is going to be like a 2.5 minute video of a production that was done by the Utah Department of Natural Resources, and it's showing you this migratory route that this single razorback sucker took, which is pretty awesome. So hopefully this all works on your guys' screen. Oh, can I just stop 1 second? Were you guys able to hear that?
No.
No, you could not hear the video. Rawr. I was concerned how that works. Do you guys want to see the video even without sound?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I'm excited.
It's a little more boring. There's a really nice narration. I can put the link to the YouTube in the chat if you want, but the Utah DNR narrates this, and it's pretty neat. And maybe I'll just kind of talk it through as it goes. So we'll just go through. Okay. Okay. So it's saying that razorback sucker is native to the Colorado River Basin. And so it's gonna show, so they tagged the fish right there in 2011, and now they're showing how it moved all the way down the Green River, and then it moved up and went up the Colorado River. So it's keep going. It keeps going. Okay. And then they detected it again in 2015, 4 years later at Gunnison. And then the fish moved back some more. So now it's like it goes through Westwater. You're going to see it's going to move down through Cataract. And then it's moving down into Lake Powell. So this is one single fish that you can like detect. So that's showing a pit tag antenna. Okay, now the fish is leaving Lake Powell, moves back up Cataract Canyon, takes a left at the green. So now it's getting detected at the Tusher diversion wash on the green. And what the narrator is saying now is that it got detected at Tusher. Tusher has a weir that goes all the way across. And on this side here, they built this passage to allow the fish to move upstream. So that fish was able to pass Tusher and then kept going further north. And then finally finished, got detected at a spawning bar. So that entire video that you just saw was a single fish that moved about 1,000 river miles over a 7-year period. So let me just stop there since you guys didn't get to hear the narration and see if you have any questions on that. And I will send the link to the
This is
video.
Christine. I've got a question.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I'm not a fish biologist, but that seems really impressive. And I was just wondering why the Razorback sucker and the Colorado Pikeminnow migrate so far. What's the evolutionary reasoning behind that kind of migration?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't think I've heard anyone like espouse ideas on that, and what is it of, any migratory species that causes them to make significant movements where you have other species that, kind of just stay in a small range. I think oftentimes it's this idea that there are specific habitats that are not equally distributed throughout their range. And so they are moving towards those specific habitats. Like what you see right there where this fish finally ended is this, it's this bar in the Green River, like a riffle kind of bar that they call Razorback bar. And so it's like where a large congregation of fish aggregate. And so I think partially maybe these long migratory routes might be to moving towards areas that are highly have high quality for either spawning or feeding. So I think that's probably where a lot of their migratory behaviors come from. Does that help?
Oh yeah, that's how it's just fascinating.
Yeah,
it's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
And just thinking about, well, since the Razorback sucker obviously goes pretty far out of the range that you're working in, do you have collaborative agreements with some of these other areas to protect Razorback sucker as they migrate out of the lower basin?
So you mean out of the upper basin?
Upper basin, sorry.
Or like, so let me just show you this next. Hold on, let me get here. Okay, all right, so this, so I wanted to show you that just to like give you that, oh my God, these fish are awesome, which I think we got to that. And then so like that was a fish that moved down the Green into the Colorado, up down into Lake Powell, up into the Colorado, back down, blah, blah. And so we've also seen what we call trans-basin movements where, so there was a a razorback sucker that was pit tagged, and you probably didn't get that in the video, but pit tags are like those little transmitters that you put in your pets. And then you can put a wand across them and you can detect that. So that's how we get a lot of these detections. So there was a razorback sucker pit tagged here, moved downstream, moved through Lake Powell, came up the San Juan. There is this waterfall here, which if we get to, I'll talk about, but that waterfall was actually inundated in 2011. That fish moved upstream, and then we captured it in the San Juan River. So these fish have the capacity at times to like move throughout the entire Green Colorado and San Juan River. And Christine, getting back to your question, you know, there is the Upper Colorado River Recovery Implementation Program, and we work hand in hand with them on all of our projects and trying to get this species and Colorado pikeminnow to the point where they can get off of the endangered species list. So we're definitely working hand in hand to try to get this done.
Okay, great. I appreciate the explanation as to
Yeah.
how you're working together. You're a little bit separated because your area that you're overseeing is different, but you are working together because these fish are doing a lot of migratory trans-basin movement, and
Yep.
you need to be working together because they're everywhere.
Yep, for sure.
Okay,
and I guess
great.
yeah, you bet. And so razorback sucker can, we've definitely detected it able to move across Lake Powell. This is the slight difference between pikeminnow and razorback sucker, is that we have not been able to see Colorado pikeminnow able to traverse Lake Powell. They seem not to be able to handle the lake environment very well, whereas razorback sucker seems to be able to handle the lake environment. And actually there are populations that persist in the lake. So the lake is probably not a barrier for razorback sucker. It could potentially be a barrier for Colorado pikeminnow. So I wanted to kind of just like taking a big overview of the distribution of these fish. And Christine, this is kind of getting to, you know, these are migratory fish that can make those big movements. And that means that their historical distribution was pretty incredible. And then so I have their historical distributions here, and then their 1990 distributions. And I have the 1990 there because that's really important as to why the San Juan Recovery Program, or when the San Juan Recovery Program came into existence. So razorback sucker on the left, it had a hard time finding a good kind of depiction of its historical habitat. Hopefully you can see it on your screen, but all of the kind of dotted areas show the historical distribution of razorback sucker. So it was throughout the entire Colorado River Basin, up all the tributaries everywhere. In 1990, there was a population in, this is Lake Mead and Lake Mojave. And then there were small limited populations of the species in the Green and the Colorado. And it was like kind of unknown if it was present in the San Juan River. It was totally possible there was detections of razorback sucker in 1976 in Bluff, Utah. So we knew it could be present there in the 1990s. And then for Colorado pikeminnow, this is the map from when it was listed as endangered. Well, it was listed as kind of endangered in 1958, and then when the Endangered Species Act came into play, it was technically listed as endangered in 1973. So in black is the river areas where it was its historic habitat. So you can see again the entire Colorado River Basin, but much more restricted to kind of the large river main stems. And then in 1990, its distribution was just in the Green and Colorado. And again, for the San Juan River, it was more or less thought that it was extirpated, meaning that it was gone from the river, but we didn't have a lot of data on that. And in the 1990s, pikeminnow was listed as endangered. Critical habitat was in the San Juan River. In 1990, razorback sucker was not listed. So what happens in 1990 is there was a water project called the Animas La Plata Water Project. And the purpose of that water project was to build Ridges Dam so Durango is over here. And so the purpose of the Animas La Plata project was to divert water from the Animas River into what was going to be created Lake Nighthorse, and then build Ridges Dam to hold that water. The intent of that water project was to deliver water for the municipalities kind of in the Durango, kind of Farmington area. This water project got initiated in the 1950s, but had a whole bunch of headwind. Some of the funding was vetoed by one of the presidents. So it had a really hard time getting its feet underneath it. But then in I think it was like the maybe mid 80s or so, there was the United States settled water rights with Mountain Ute Indian tribe, as well as Southern Ute Indian tribe. And then this water project was going to be used to help deliver water to those tribes. And so it started getting its feet underneath it. And so in 1990, construction was planned for this project. So this was a Bureau of Reclamation project. And so what happens is, we had the Endangered Species Act by that time. So the Bureau of Reclamation needed to determine whether or not this project was going to have an impact on any endangered species. And so the job of the Fish and Wildlife Service, so Bureau of Reclamation looks at its project, says, is this going to have an impact on endangered species? They write what's called, and probably many of you are familiar with this, a biological assessment. They give that to the Fish and Wildlife Service to say, do you guys concur with our assessment? In this instance, the Fish and Wildlife Service said, we do not concur with your assessment. We actually think that your project has the potential to jeopardize the existence of Colorado pikeminnow, right? So at this time in 1990, only Colorado pikeminnow was listed as endangered. Fish and Wildlife Service thought that that the Animas La Plata project could dewater the largest tributary to the San Juan and then cause irredeemable harm to the San Juan River itself, removing that habitat from any potential as being Colorado pikeminnow inhabited, I guess you could say. And so when the Fish and Wildlife Service says you might jeopardize the existence, it turns into a really big deal. And so what happened is the Bureau of Reclamation and Fish and Wildlife Service started negotiating what to do. And that Upper Colorado River Endangered Fish Recovery Program was already in existence. And when that program got created, for some reasons that are probably political, they did not include the San Juan River Basin kind of within their jurisdiction. And so what the Bureau of Reclamation and Fish and Wildlife Service decided to do to keep from jeopardizing the existence of Colorado pikeminnow was to create the San Juan River Basin Recovery Implementation Program. And so that was the outcome of considering what would be the impacts of the Animas La Plata project. The first two major things that happened once the Recovery Implementation Program or in those negotiations was that the Bureau of Reclamation would pay for 7 years of research. So the whole intent there was to determine what actually was the status of Razorback sucker and Colorado pikeminnow in the San Juan River. Were they present? What did habitat look like? All of those types of things. The other thing that the Bureau of Reclamation and Fish and Wildlife Service negotiated was that Bureau of Reclamation was willing to operate Navajo Reservoir to provide flows to the main stem San Juan River. And so during that 7-year research period, they developed what are called the flow recommendations out of Navajo Reservoir. So any questions on that? That can get there's a lot of kind of politics and negotiations kind of in there.
That was really helpful. Thank you, Eliza.
Okay. All right. So, so this is kind of just recapping that, right? So when the San Juan River Recovery Implementation Program was developed, it was developed to recover Pikeminnow. And then, oh, sorry. So in 1991, before all those negotiations kind of ended up finishing up, Razorback sucker got listed as endangered. So then Razorback sucker got grouped into the Recovery Implementation Program. So we have two main purposes: to recover our 2 endangered fishes and provide for water development. So from the get-go, so that 7 years of research showed that there actually was Colorado pikeminnow in the San Juan River. They were able to detect young of year fish. So that meant 2 things. It meant that there was an adult population in the river, and it also meant they were successfully reproducing. So when we started the recovery program, we knew that there was a very small, I think they collected 4 fish out of 7 years. So they were there, but just in tiny numbers. And they did not detect any razorback sucker. So our first kind of purpose was to repatriate, which means reestablish pikeminnow and razorback sucker into the river. And the other thing that we have kind of did in the establishment and then over time is we've provided Endangered Species Act compliance for 356 water projects that comprises almost 900,000 acre feet of kind of water diversion. So a lot of water projects can then kind of point to the recovery program as their compliance for their projects. Okay, and so who is this recovery program? I kind of mentioned it before. So I work for Fish and Wildlife Service, but we're just a part of this program, and our job is to coordinate. And so what we're coordinating is a whole bunch of people, funds, expenditures, but the program is made up of 4 Indian tribes. You have Mountain Ute, you have Southern Ute Indian tribe, Jicarilla Apache, and then the Navajo Nation. We're also comprised of 4 federal entities. So that's the Bureau of Land Management, Bureau of Indian Affairs, Bureau of Reclamation, and then Fish and Wildlife Service. The National Park Service may be joining the San Juan Recovery Program here in the next year or so. And then we're also comprised of 2 state entities. So the state of New Mexico, the state of Colorado, and then Utah may be joining us soon. And then there's also 2 kind of an NGO, the Nature Conservancy, and then there are water users that are represented. And so all of those entities, each of them has a seat on a biology committee, and each has a seat on the coordination committee. And so more or less this program is run by those 2 committees. They're the dominant ones that make kind of decisions on what we should do, how we should do it, and then how to expend the funds that we get. And then the Fish and Wildlife Service, we're kind of responsible for coordinating everybody. The Bureau of Reclamation gets kind of stuck with the bill. And let me just get to the bill. So as I kind of said before, a recovery implementation program is pretty special. It's a congressionally authorized program. There's only about 4 or 5 recovery implementation programs in the country. When Congress authorizes these implementation programs, the big thing behind that means that it's authorizing the federal government to extend funds to those recovery implementation programs. This really busy pie chart you have over here is showing where all the funds we have got, which is about $100 million in the last 20 plus years. This green part right here, kind of federal funds, is funds that come from Western Area Power Administration. So those are the power revenues that come from the Colorado River Storage Project, right? So these is funds that come from Glen Canyon Dam hydropower generation. So that's where we've gotten almost 50% of our money. And so that comes through kind of a federal fund avenue, because WAPA is semi-federal. And then we've gotten allocations directly through Congress from the Bureau of Reclamation. And then all of our partners have either provided in kind or sometimes in cash fund. And those monies, they go to kind of a base fund, which is what we use for our annual expenditures. And then we also get money for capital projects. So the base funds, we have about $2.8 million a year to do our job. And then we've have capital funds, which right this minute is about 11 million. The capital funds goes to purely like infrastructure type stuff. If you're going to build, construct something, we use our capital funds. So what do we spend all that money on? These next couple slides is kind of how we do our job and what we're spending our money on. So I told you that both Razorback sucker and Colorado Pikeminnow were either gone or just minimally present in the San Juan River. So our first job was to reestablish both fish into the San Juan River. And what you have here on this left-hand side, this is a photo of a hatchery down in southeastern New Mexico that produces fish for us. So they produce Colorado Pikeminnow and Razorback sucker. This is those poor fish being like poured into the San Juan River, and these are Razorback sucker being pushed into the river. So they don't get the best introduction into the river, as you might think. But over time, so in the last 20 years, we've stocked somewhere in the order of 5 million Colorado Pikeminnow and upwards of like 40 to 50,000 Razorback sucker through our hatchery system. So we're reestablishing the population through stocking. And then, as I said before, you know, Pikeminnow used to be the dominant predator. Now there's a whole bunch of other predators that didn't exist. And so there's a whole bunch of non-native fish that have the capacity to eat other fish that have been introduced into the system. In the San Juan River, we've been really lucky that we only have 2 fish that are kind of problematic. One is carp, and we've been able to reduce their numbers. And then the second is channel catfish. And channel catfish are kind of omnivorous. They're kind of like the pigs of the river. They'll more or less eat anything. So they're not a gigantic threat, but they're still a threat. And so we will go and we will mechanically remove catfish from the river. And this is me just showing you how we do that. You can probably tell it's not the most efficient in the entire world. So this is a boat that has a generator sitting on the back. There's an anode and an electrode. So it kind of creates this electric field around the boat. It causes all the fish within that field to, their muscles to kind of contract. They rise up out of the water, and then, you know, a human goes and dips nets the fish. So that's one other action we do to recover fish, is to remove predatory threats. Okay, and then so let's see, sorry. Okay, so we reestablish fish, we remove predatory threats, and then we try to remediate problems that might come from water development through diversion for irrigation. And so there's 2 things that come from that, is entrainment of fish into the irrigation canal itself. And then oftentimes when you're diverting water, you need to put a structure across the river, and that can create issues with passage. And so the map I have here is just showing you the San Juan River Basin. This little black dot is that waterfall, which we might come to. And then here is this larger insert. And so this is just showing you all of the kind of ditches that we have within the kind of the upper portion of the San Juan River. So this is where we're working to reduce entrainment and provide passage. And so I just wanted to show you some really nice technology that actually the Bureau of Reclamation came up with that we implemented in the San Juan River to reduce entrainment. So this is Hogback Irrigation Canal. It's probably the largest diversion on the San Juan River. So it's a really large canal here. This is the main stem river here. This is the sluiceway. This is showing you a better picture of this area right here. And so what this is it's about a 6 to 8 foot concrete wall that goes horizontally up and down in the canal. And so again, this is water that's going to come out and then back into the river. And then this is water that's going to go into the irrigation canal. And then this picture here is getting even closer. So this is water going into the irrigation canal. This is water that's going to go out and back into the river. And so here is this wall right here. The whole concept here is that fish are going to be like down lower in that water column. And you're just going to take the top 10 inches of water and move that into the irrigation canal. So hopefully you are only putting fish-free water into the irrigation canal and allowing the water that has the fish return back into the river. So this is some technology the Bureau of Reclamation came up with. We constructed it in the San Juan River. It had a pretty hefty price tag of $3.5 million, but seems to really work well. And this is technology that's being constructed in the Green and Colorado River. So this has been really good to reduce entrainment here. And then we've also paid for fish passage. What you have here on the left, this is a diversion cross river. The river is going this way. This is the Public Service of New Mexico's diversion for the San Juan generating station. And so you can tell this is a full, it's like a two-step barrier, this weir here. So it's a full-on barrier for fish. And so we paid for and constructed this fish passage here, which is kind of like a naturalized fish ladder. And then over here, this is the hogback diversion again. And it's dewatered, but I just chose this picture so you could see it a little better. But this is kind of grouted rock that we created here for fish to be able to pass upstream of this diversion and that sluice gate here. And that was another probably like in total another $5 to $7 million for construction of those two passages. Okay, and then I said that the Navajo Reservoir, we asked to have flow recommendations. So this is really providing for flow throughout the San Juan River. Basically, so we asked for base flows. So that's having 500 to 1,000 CFS in the river year round. It's measured as an average across all the different gauges throughout the San Juan River. And then this very busy graphic, I was trying to figure out the best way to do it, but it's hard, kind of show is depicting that the flow recommendations have three things in them. They have the magnitude of flow that we're asking for. They have the duration, so how many days are we asking for that flow? And then the frequency, how many times in between having those flows are we asking for? So this is really 2,500 CFS is the first flow we ask for, 5,000, 8,000, and 10,000. So those are the magnitudes we ask for. We ask for the 2,500 for 10 days, the 5,000 for 21, the 8,000 for 10 days, and then the 10,000 for 5 days. And then the frequency is we ask at least every 2 years for 2,500, every 4 years for 5,000, 6 for 8, and every 10 years for the 10,000 CFS. And then it's really just this kind of portion of the graph that shows you how well we've kind of done over time to get those recommendations. So we were doing pretty well in the early 1990s through 2010s. And then, as I'm sure you're all aware, reduced water in our systems. And in the last decade or so, when you see red, that means we've not been getting to meeting those flow recommendations. But that's what we asked for. And what was negotiated back in 1990 is to get flows out of Navajo Reservoir. Most of it's to help support habitat. And then so that's kind of what we've done with all of our money. And then these next couple of slides are how is that, how have we done with all of that? And so I said Razorback sucker was not present in the system. Then we started stocking. And so this graphic here is showing you Razorback sucker larvae since 1999 through to 2021, so about 2 decades. And you can see we started stocking adult Razorback sucker, and they really are good. So they stay in the system, and they start producing larvae right off the bat. And so over time, as we've been stocking and our fish have been persisting, they continue to produce larvae. And then let me just direct you over to this right-hand side here. And so these are estimates of our populations of adult Razorback sucker now in the system. So starting from 1990, now in this last 20 end of 2010s, we estimate we have probably somewhere around 3,000 adult razorback sucker in the system. And this is all stocked fish. And we know that this is all stocked fish because this is our problem, is that we have not been able to detect juveniles recruiting from the larval stage back into the subadult and adult stage. So we've been good at getting stocked fish to stay and persist. Those fish are doing their job by reproducing, but there's something in the system that's limiting recruitment into the juvenile stage. And then for Colorado pikeminnow, and it's a kind of similar story. It's a slightly different. So we stocked a whole bunch of fish, and we actually stocked them at really small sizes. So like a two-inch fish. It takes Colorado pikeminnow about 7 to 8 years to get mature. So it took a while to create a population. Right now we have probably somewhere around 200 and 250 subadults. These are all stocked fish. And so it did take a while for us to start seeing larvae in the system. But again, these fish are sustaining in the system. They're doing their job by finding each other and reproducing. And I put this not so much with a slash across it. It's more of a question. And then we think there might be juveniles recruiting. So it's possible that this full life cycle is happening for this species.
Hey, quick question.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, this is Rob, EPA Region 6. So what are your hypotheses there for why you're not seeing juveniles? Is it a function of your sampling geared? Are they using different habitats?
Yeah, for which species?
Yes.
For both. Okay.
Sure.
Okay, sure. So for razorback sucker, oh man, we go through so many haranguing of what's going on here. I think the dominant opinion is that juveniles require a very specific habitat, which is backwater, really warm, productive habitat, and that in the San Juan River, we're a pretty steep sloped river. And so we do not have a large amount of backwater, and the backwater that did used to exist in the river has kind of degraded over time with the input of Russian olive, and our river is getting a little channelized. And so we maybe don't have that backwater habitat like we used to. And then the other kind of thought is that, and this kind of gets to Christine's question about migration. The other thought about this species is that when larvae were produced, is that these larvae were highly mobile. They just went into the main stem of the river and just let themselves drift all the way down into the nice kind of lake habitat. And that's where they used as a place to recruit. And now currently that lake habitat, one, is full of non-native fish. So these larvae just get eaten. And then two, for us, if they do recruit in Lake Powell, we have this waterfall, which means that they can't move back upstream. So those are kind of the two thoughts on razorback. On Colorado pikeminnow, I think we're much more optimistic that we think we have juveniles. Our problem is like we didn't think through what we were doing from the get-go, in as much as we stocked all of those. I told you, like, about two-inch fish. So we stock about 400,000 2-inch fish every year. And so and you can't put a pit tag into that size fish. And so we've now recently changed our methods, but previously we thought we were seeing wild fish, but we couldn't definitively say that they are wild because we couldn't distinguish wild from stocked fish. So we actually think that our system does provide for juveniles, but we just haven't been able to distinguish it. And one of the reasons, you know, you can tell that we didn't start seeing like larvae until like 2015, 2017. So we kind of weren't even concerned about this stage because we were still barely seeing any larvae produced. But I think we think that we might be doing okay once we get enough larvae in the system and we start seeing these adult numbers increasing. Does that?
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, and then so like on this much larger scale, how are we and that other recovery program doing, as well as there are a number, well, for Razorback sucker, there's a number of efforts being conducted in the lower basin to try to recover that species. The species has been gone from the Colorado Pikeminnow has been gone from the lower basin for a long time, and the decision was made at a higher level than me that there would be no effort to reintroduce Pikeminnow into the lower basin. I'm saying all that partially because Razorback sucker was listed as endangered in 1991. It is currently being proposed and considered for being downlisted from endangered to threatened. So we have moved the bar on that species, mostly because we've reestablished a population in the San Juan River. They're stocking the Green and Colorado River here, so they've increased populations. They've started a new population here, and they've also increased the population of Razorback sucker down in the lower basin. So that species is doing much better than how it was doing in 1990 when it became part of the San Juan recovery program. Colorado Pikeminnow, we have been successful in getting a population back into the San Juan, as you just saw. There was an assessment as to whether or not it should be declassified from endangered to threatened. That was just considered about a year ago. The conclusion at that point in time was not to downlist it from endangered to threatened, mostly because the populations in the Green and Colorado are actually seeing a downward trajectory. So while we have been able to reestablish the species in the San Juan, these populations up here are not doing as well as they had been in the past. So that's kind of like the overall how is everybody doing as far as getting these species off of the endangered species list. And we in the San Juan program are just like a piece of that effort. And then, kind of coming to our second prong, as far as, we're here to provide compliance and kind of allow for water development to continue. So we have been, I said earlier, we have about 356 water development projects that we provide compliance for. And then I think a lot of us in the Fish and Wildlife Service, we get sued all the time. And for the San Juan River Basin, we have not gotten sued. So we can, for any of our water development projects or, coming from an endangered species kind of nexus. So we consider that a success. And then probably just kind of go quickly through this because I see I'm at time. I didn't realize I would talk so much. And so these are just our kind of persistent hot topic issues. So as I showed you before, for our two species, there's kind of that bottleneck potentially in the juvenile stage for Razorback sucker. I didn't speak to it as well, but kind of our bottleneck for Colorado Pikeminnow might not be that juvenile stage. It's more, I told you we stocked 5 million fish. And as I showed you, we have just like 150 adults. So while they persist in the river, that stocking doesn't take very well. And then, as you all know, there's just a massive amount of water demands. And so I showed you we're not really meeting our flow recommendations very well. There are other water rights that have yet to be developed in the system. And so we know that's coming. And then there is this waterfall. I'll just show you a photo of it. So here's the San Juan River. There's this waterfall here. Here's Lake Powell. And so Christine sent me a presentation you all saw kind of on Cataract Canyon and what happened with sediment deposition with Lake Powell coming up, and then like Lake Powell receding, and now Cataract is coming back. And so this is kind of in a similar vein, where as much as like Lake Powell rose up the San Juan River, so it came up past where this waterfall is now. Then when Powell receded, what happened is the river ended up moving its course and kind of came over this sandstone area cliff. And now it's this gigantic waterfall, which is a total barrier to fish. So fish can't move upstream of that waterfall. So it's kind of a sink for all of those fish that we stock into the river. Although it provides us an amazing amount of protection from all the non-native fish that are in Lake Powell. So it's this good and bad kind of thing. So I will leave it there. And I'm sorry I talk so much. So any other questions I might be able to answer?
No, it's fascinating. It's really, really interesting. Anybody have any other questions for Eliza? Just unmute yourself and ask.
Yeah, would you mind putting
Eliza,
up? No, go ahead, please.
Eliza, thanks very much. That was a really great presentation. It covered a lot of ground. I was curious as to how far up the Animas River have you seen some of these species? And with the climate change, with the warming of the waters, do you expect the habitat to kind of increase because different waterways are going to have more, are going to be warmer water?
Sure. Yep. So let's see. So historically, Razorback sucker was documented in Durango. So that's its like most upstream historical range. As I kind of showed you on that photo with all of the kind of entrainment fish passage issues we have, there's the Animas River is just chock full of diversions and passage issues. And so it's pretty hard for fish that we stock in the San Juan River main stem to get itself up the Animas. The furthest we've detected it, fish, has been, let me just run back up here. So the furthest we've detected fish is this Animas pumping station 2, just because some of these other diversions are not full on cross river diversions. This Animas pumping station 2 is pretty much a full on diversion. So that's the furthest upstream we've seen fish. Getting to your question about increasing temperatures, absolutely, it should help our fish. In as much as, so the water that comes out of Navajo Dam is really cold, right? It's that hypolimnetic release of the bottom part of the reservoir. So this water here is like 5 to 9 degrees. I didn't say this before, but both of these fishes are considered warm water fishes. So they are not trout. They do not like 9, 10, 12 degree water. They're more in like the, I'm sorry, I'm speaking in Celsius. They're like more in the 15, 18 to 20-ish. So I think climate change will actually help make this part of the river more useful to them. I guess some of the other issues is that channel catfish really like warm water too. So that's going to help channel catfish a bit as well.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Rob, do you want to ask your question?
I was just going to ask you to put the Russian olive graphic.
Oh, sure.
Slide 27. Just,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, so I can talk through this real quick. So, you know, this is one of these landscape scale issues that we are having a really hard time with. So, you know, here's a photo of the San Juan River, really beautiful, complex floodplain in 1935. And I know these are hard to see, but like all the black is kind of like water movement. So this is during a flood. Here's 1975. You can see the channels kind of restricted. You can see vegetation starting to take hold. And this is 2011. And the river is just totally restricted to this channel. Russian olive has totally taken over. So this whole like beautiful floodplain habitat, which is where we think like razorback sucker larvae would have recruited into juveniles, is no longer kind of available as that type of habitat due to Russian olive encroachment. And this is just one of those sticky issues that I know, like, it's such a landscape scale issue. We don't really have good tools to figure it out. Except, you know, if we could get really gigantic flows in the river, it should just plow the Russian olive down. But that's so unrealistic. It's not going to happen again. I don't know if I told you, but like the San Juan River used to have somewhere in like the 80 to 90,000 CFS flows. And now we're lucky if we get that 10,000 CFS pulse.
Wow.
This was a great presentation. Thank you.
You bet.
Yeah, fantastic presentation and so incredibly interesting.
I'm glad it's my life. I always think it's great.
And I can see why you like them. They're not just a boring average fish. They look like they're pretty darn
They're
interesting.
pretty darn interesting. And, there's all these, it's a puzzle to try to figure out what's going on.
Do you have any other questions for Eliza before we close out today?
This is Mike Church. I was just going to say a great presentation. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you. I really appreciate your attention, letting me just blab.
No, it was really, really interesting. Really, really interesting. And I think, do you want to put your email in the chat in case other folks
yep.
have other questions?
You bet.
I don't know if you can see, there's lots of people saying great presentation. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
For sharing that. And it was really interesting to kind of get the history of both of the programs. I've seen them before, particularly the Upper Colorado, but didn't know as much about the San Juan. So this has been really interesting for me.
Yeah, you bet. And then I just threw in that, so Utah DNR's video, if you actually wanted to see it with the narration, they did an excellent job.
Well, thank you so much,
Okay,
Eliza,
you bet.
for a great presentation and really an eye-opening one to give us a better idea of kind of what's going on with threatened and endangered fish species in the river and just some of the issues, but Russian olive particularly, that all of us kind of have to deal with anyway. So
yeah,
thank you so much. And thanks to everybody for attending today. It was great to see you all. Thank you. Bye-bye.
bye.